The title of my sermon is The Resurrection and the Life, and I preached this on Sunday, September the 29th, 2019, at Prospect, Trinity, and Asbury United Methodist Churches in Harrington, Delaware. My name is the Reverend Dr. Lawrence Jameson. In the Gospel of John, there are 7 times that Jesus uses the word ego eimi. Now, some Bible scholars call this the I am statements of Jesus. They are the bread of life, the light of the world, the door of the sheep, the good shepherd, the resurrection and the life, the way, the truth, and the life, and the true vine. Today we are considering when Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. Now, if you did your homework and you read John chapter 11, then you will know the story, because Lazarus died when Jesus was far away, and Jesus came back to encounter 2 grieving and angry sisters who didn't understand why Jesus did not prevent their brother from dying. Then something amazing happened, and Jesus called Lazarus out of the tomb. Jesus brought him back to life. Now, this is one of 3 times that Jesus raised the dead. The first time was Jairus' daughter, and we read about that in Mark chapter 5. The second time was the widow's son in the town of Nain, and we read about that in Luke chapter 7. And then this third one, of course, is the story for today, when Jesus raised his friend Lazarus, and that is found in John chapter 11. Now, let's go back and focus in on the encounter that Jesus had with the first of the 2 sisters, Martha. This is the context of the I am statement of Jesus, and when he said, I am the resurrection and the life. Let's take a look at this verse. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Martha answered, I know he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. And then Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is come into the world. End quote. There is so much in these few verses that I could preach all day and you would fall asleep. So I'm going to do my best to make it short. Let's take a look at verse 21. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. You know, along with the grief, there was anger and hurt and naturally blame. When anybody that we love dies, this is our go-to standard. And so we need to ask the question, is it okay to blame God? Is it okay to get angry with God? And is it okay for us to point the finger at God and vent? Yes. Yes, it is. It's okay. And let me tell you why. Because God can take it. I wouldn't be able to take it, and you wouldn't be able to take it, but God can, because he's tough. And it's okay for us to let our anger out appropriately and tell God how we really feel, because he already knows. You know, in the Bible, all of the heroes of faith got mad with God, every single one of them. They bargained with God, they yelled at God, they became frustrated and angry with God. And that's what happened at the Jabbok River to Jacob when he wrestled with God. You know, he was in extreme stress. He was at the end of his rope. He came out of that encounter a new man with a new name. On one side of the Jabbok River, he was Jacob. On the other side, he became Israel, which translated means God contends. Dear ones, I want you to know that God contends with us, and we contend with God. That's our heritage. Life is not easy, but it is worth it. God never, ever left Israel. It was in his pain and fear that God became real to him. And this is where our religion goes from being something on the surface to something foundational. Chapter 11 was Martha's Jabbok River. Chapter 11 was Mary's Jabbok River. Oh, I don't want the Jabbok River. If I can avoid it, I will. No way do I want to go across that river. Give me an easy life, Lord. Don't make me inventory all the junk in my metal trunk. But I know that there are moments when we are at the end of our rope, and that is when God becomes real. And I'm here to tell you that God will never, ever let you go. I can't prove this, but it's true. What is our anger? What is our frustration and fear? What is the blame that we throw? And what is our resistance and our attempts to cut and run? Those are not going to chase God away. God is with us for the entire journey, and His love and His grace and His presence sustain us. And that's why Jesus said, I am the resurrection and the life. Let's look at verse 26 and 27. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Yes, Lord, she replied. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God who has come into the world. End quote. These are some of the most beautiful words we have ever heard. Lazarus has not been raised, and Martha is still in full-blown grief. It's important for us to know that when she made her profession of faith like this, it was not in a pretty moment. That is when Jesus asked her, do you believe? And we go, what? Jesus asked her in 10 minutes after the miracle is done. But oh no, Jesus asked her before the miracle. And I absolutely love the answer that Martha gave to him. Yes, Lord, she replied, I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God who has come into the world. End quote. Oh, she was still weeping when she said that, and her heart was broken to bits. And she didn't understand, and she was so angry and so hurt, yet somehow Jesus knew, as He always knows, what was inside. Deep, rock-solid faith and an insight that needed to be shared. And aren't we sharing her insight right now? And here it is, 2019. That's 2019 years after the event. And we are still talking about this encounter. Faith moves mountains. Faith opens graves. Faith turns sour into sweet. And faith is a gift from God. Then is when Jesus brought a miracle. And it was this miracle that led directly to Palm Sunday. You think about Palm Sunday and all the people lining the streets of Jerusalem. They were holding their palm branches in their hands, and they welcomed Jesus. It was because of this mighty, public, in-your-face miracle of Lazarus brought back from the dead. Looking back at John chapter 11, this is when the Bible says Jesus wept. John 11:35. That's the shortest verse in the Bible. And if you ever memorize a verse, this is the easiest. John 11:35, Jesus wept. John 11:35. Jesus knows your hurt. He gets your frustration and your desperation. He shares your loss, and He knows your pain. He isn't going to separate from us. Jesus understands us. He is our friend. Now, what Bible verse tells us that Jesus is our friend? John 11:35. The Lord said, I am the resurrection and the life. And so we need to ask the question, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that His identity as Messiah will become known to you when He raises the dead for you. He will become personally understood by you when He meets you at the point of your need, and you will see that He is who He said He is. I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall not hunger. He who believes in me shall not thirst. No one can come to me unless the Father draw him, and I will raise him up, and I will raise him up, and I will raise him up on the last day. I am the resurrection, and I am the life. He who believes in me, even if he die, he shall live forever, and I will raise him up, and I will raise him up, and I will raise him up on the last day. Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who has come into the world, and I will raise him up, and I will raise him up, and I will raise him up on the last day, and I will raise him up, and I will raise him up, and I will raise him up on the last day. Okay, here's your homework assignment. I'd like to invite you to read John chapter 14 this week in order to get ready for next Sunday. Thank you for listening to this sermon.